Welcome back to a new video. It is that time again where I go through and fill out my reading journal for the month. And I apologize if you can hear any purring in the background. Pip is currently sitting on me and he purrs very, very loudly. Anyways, let's get started by filling out the initial page, the stats page. I'm doing a kind of celestial theme. I've been really into doing the celestial themes lately, and I love the blues and the golds and some of the pinks in there, and it's just really lovely, although this one doesn't have much in the way of pink. But anyways, this paper is actually quite thick, and this reading journal, this poor journal, it's got so much in the way of thick paper in there. I have not been at all careful about distributing the thickness of the paper products that I have been putting in here. But you know what? It is holding up pretty well considering all of the bits and bobs that I have been installing. Helps if I do it upright though. Just adding some gold washi tape from Archer and Olive. This came in the latest subscription box, which is probably where my celestial interests appeared, because the box was a celestial theme, and I really love the stars and the sparkles and the galaxies and the skies and that sort of a thing. It's very nice. Thought I would use a paint pen this month since I happen to have some shiny metallic paint pens. They weren't stored properly. I stored them vertically, but these are dual tip, so they need to be stored horizontally. These are from Artistro, and they work pretty well, I would say, except for the improper storing situation, but that's neither here nor there. Now, to get into some of my stats for the month. This month was a decent reading month. It was an even better clearing out of the TBR month. I did a whole TBR clear out, which you can find on my YouTube channel. I'll link that in the description below. I went through my TBR. I have gone through and cleaned out a lot of the books that I was given a long time ago. They've been on my TBR for years. I got them for free from various giveaways or reader events or whatnot, and some of them just weren't interesting to me anymore, so I cleaned out a bunch of my TBR. So I started with 86 at the start of September, and then I ended up with 42, and I only read 14 books, and I acquired 17. And by acquired, I mean I borrowed a lot of them from Kindle Unlimited, and then some I got that were not for my TBR. And then I may have gone to the bookstore. I just can't help it, I get the need to go to the bookstore, and it just kind of overtakes me. So I bought 5 books, which actually are on the TBR. Well, 4 of them are. Phantom of the Opera I have read before, but I just saw the pretty children's edition, and so I stuck that in my collection. Anyways, moving on. I was once again too lazy to print out the structured books read author rating placard that I have stuck into the reading journal in previous months, but I wrote out all of the information by hand, and you can hardly see that on camera. I didn't realize how shiny this pen would be showing up. So it doesn't show up very well, but don't worry, we will go through all of the information. Just know that there are 14 books on here. I will only be doing 13 reviews because one of the books was called Once Upon a Curse. I think it was by Kate Dean, but I don't remember. It was a book that I got for free from some reader promo thing absolutely ages ago, and I could not find it on Goodreads, and I must have gotten rid of it from my Kindle because I could not find it there. It was just a prequel novella for a fairy tale retelling series. This one started with The Frog Prince, so I think it was not really meant to be on Goodreads. I think it was just like a newsletter exclusive thing or some promo thing. So I won't be reviewing that because I can't find any of the information. It was decent, kind of a 3-star average. Not really planning on reading it again, so I'm not too bothered by the lack. Just going in and adding my quick ratings. I have given up entirely on doing coloring in of the star things. Maybe if I had something that was pre-printed that was not quite so fiddly as the one I had been using previously, it's fine. I don't mind writing out the numbers. All right. Before we get into the reviews, the month of September was the last month of the Indie Fantasy Addicts Summer Reading Challenge. If you haven't heard of them, they are a Facebook group for people who read and write indie fantasy, and I have been a part of it for several years at this point. And the Summer Reading Challenge is kind of the big event of the year, where you read books, you post your reviews, you can put together adventure wheels, and you win prizes. And I got 1,111 points, which makes me ridiculously pleased. I didn't read a massive number of books. I read enough to do one adventure wheel, which is reading a bunch of different books in different subgenres, and I got a prize, and I'm so pleased. It's a great time. If you haven't heard of it, I'll link the group down below in the description, and you can find them. I highly recommend you check them out. The first book that we will be reviewing for the month is a book called Under the Earth Over the Sky by Emily McCosh. This book is everything that I think a fairy book should be. This is kind of the original Legends fairy strangeness vibe sort of a thing, where the fae are just kind of unusual and very scary, and they don't really follow normal human rules. It was so clever and so well done. It's about a fairy king under the mountain, under the earth, as it were, who adopts a human son, and kind of his adventures from there. There's some interesting magic, there's a lovely, fascinating world, and the writing was so good. It was lyrical, but understandable and smooth, and I just loved it so much. This was my first 5-star read of the month. It was my first read of the month, so that always helps. And I just really enjoyed it. I absolutely recommend. The next book that I read was a non-fiction book. This is Metabolical by Robert H. Lustig, I think. He is a doctor talking about the various impacts of processed food on the human body. I have been on a non-fiction reading about nutrition kick lately, so I'm quite interested in this topic, and I thought this book, it started off really well. I think he was very well versed in the topic. I think he had done a lot of research, and there's a lot of evidence to back up his claim that basically processed food isn't great for you. But my issue was that this book was extremely pedantic. He would state a point, and then he would state it again, and then a few pages later you'd see it again, and it got to halfway in the book, and I'm like, okay, you have said this 12 times already. I'm so bored, and I get that things are not great, and yes, big food is bad, and government regulations need to be improved, but oh my goodness, shut up. So it was a very good concept, very poorly written, which earned it a 2.5 stars, because the writing absolutely matters to me. Moving on, I did a reread after reading Metabolical. I did a reread of a comfort romance series. This is the Penny Reads Neanderthal Seeks Human and Neanderthal Marries Human. I have a box set that has both of these books in it, and I read it every time I need a comfort romance, and I love her books so much. They're smart. The characters are kind of not your standard romance characters. They're intelligent and they are quirky, and I love it. These are the sort of books that I read whenever I just need to kind of relax and melt my brain without feeling too dumb. So I reread these all the time. I really need to get them in physical copy because it's kind of ridiculous at this point. What will I do if the internet goes out or my technology dies? So this is on my list of books to buy in physical copy. Actually, pretty much all of Penny Read's romance books I should buy in physical copy because I just enjoy them so much. Moving on, though, the next book I read was Much Ado About Soulmates by, I have it, Ellie McLean. I'm so sorry, I got the name so wrong. I had looked for a book that was low fantasy. This was to finish out the adventure reel, the subgenre, low fantasy subgenre for the summer reading challenge. And I stumbled across this book, and it is sort of a low fantasy. Elsie McLean. Yeah. It's sort of a low fantasy. It is set, it's basically a retelling of Much Ado About Nothing, Shakespeare's romantic comedy, comedy of errors, I guess, where in this world, everything is done in black and white. You can't see color unless you meet your soulmate, and then everything is in color. And this was a fascinating reimagining of Much Ado About Nothing, which is one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. I absolutely love it. I think it's ridiculous and hilarious, and so much fun. I was expecting this to kind of be, cheesy and cheeky. I mean, a world without color until you meet your soulmate is kind of cliche, but oh my goodness, this was done so well. There were multiple points of view, so you got to see kind of the whole play story as it was unfolding, and it was so well done. The color was part of the world, but it was also kind of in the background, and it was just really interesting. And I love how the author dealt with the whole hero situation, where hero kind of gets attacked verbally by her supposed love of her life, and then later on there's reconciliation, but this was different, and I loved this book. It was so good, so clever. It didn't quite fit for the low fantasy summer reading challenge because it was more romance, very, very firmly romance with just a teeny smidge of magical realism in there than it was anything sort of fantasy, which then had me reading my next book, which is The Wizard's Butler by Nathan Lowell. This was a clever book. This book followed Mulligan, Robert Mulligan, as he was a former army medic and EMT, and he gets hired on to be a butler for an old man who believes that he is a wizard. And it turns out that he's not lying. So there's dealing with interfering family members who want the old man's estate and his money, and then there's dealing with the house pixies and just how to get them to accept the introduction of internet to the house and that sort of a thing. And then there's a cursed amulet and all that sort of stuff. It's kind of cozy. I would say the stakes aren't quite low enough, but they're not quite high enough either, so it falls pretty well within the cozy fantasy genre, but more on the more dramatic end of things. It's kind of a slice of life situation, but very much a Jeeves slice of life, with if Jeeves served a wizard. I loved it. It was so fun and so clever, and I absolutely would read more in this world if I could find it. I think it's out there. I'm pretty sure it is. I just I get distracted and I forget to look. But this is one book that I absolutely will be looking out for more of, because it was just so much fun. The next book, I didn't catch the decorations for this book in frame, so apologies for the jump skip there where suddenly there's more decor. It's just cheap washi tape from Amazon and some stickers also from Amazon. I'm trying to use them up. Anyways, this is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. This is kind of the prequel novel to the Divine Rivals duology, following the goddess Matilda, who is Herald of the Gods, and her friend slash future lover Vincent, who is a human. I think the world is so clever. I love her writing. I think it's just really well done. No notes, really. I mean, it was just fun and entertaining, and the plot twists were so many and so vast and just really, really cool to read, and I loved how it was crafted. My only real complaint is that the epilogue dealt more with the Divine Rivals part of things than it did with the Wild Reverence story, which, you know, it's fine. It's a prequel, so you have to connect them somehow, but I was wanting more of Matilda and Vincent, so a little bit bummed there. Oh well, absolutely great. Do recommend. Gave it a 4.5 stars. The next book is an anthology that was put on by the Indie Fantasy Addicts group. They do this every year in accordance with their summer reading challenge. They get 12 or so authors to submit stories. Well, more than that, submit the stories, but 12 are picked and then have their stories put in the anthology. Now, I can't give you a full accounting of this anthology because I was actually one of the authors that got my book into this. The Librarian of Greywall Academy is in there, and I had fun writing that book. And you will hear more about it in future videos because I have plans and ideas. But I also edited a story that was in there, so I can't give you a review of that one. So I'll just do a general review of the other stories that were in here. I thought they were very fun. All of them were very different, even though they played on the central theme of academy or magical academy. It was anything from magical botany to a sort of combat situation to go take over the teaching role at an academy, to trials or graduation or whatnot. I thought it was really clever. All of these stories were really, really good. So some of the stories were actually part of larger worlds, and you could tell with a couple of them that there was more to the story, more to the situation, but you know what? I really enjoyed it, and I would absolutely read more from all the various authors. Well, except for myself. I can't really read more of myself because I write the books, and that just is weird and confusing. Anyways, moving on. The next book I read was Reign of the Dragon Queen by, hold on, I got it. Cadence Connor. I want to call her Constance. I don't know why. Cadence Connor. I get that wrong every time, which is why I had to double check. This book was very much, it felt very much like the Dragon Riders of Pern series, where a woman comes in from the outside and bonds a dragon queen and then has to deal with the politics and fighting and learning how to be a dragon rider within the hold, although they don't call it a hold. It felt almost exactly like Pern, which, you know, I love Pern. I thought it was great, but it was a bit odd because I was like, oh, well, I guess this is what's happening next, and then I was right, because that's what happened in Pern. Now, the enemy wasn't threads, and there was a bit more in the way of strategy and fighting and whatnot than you get in the Dragon Riders of Pern books, but it was enough to kind of unsettle me a bit. I enjoyed the book. I think it was really well written, but I won't be continuing in the series because I can't really handle that half uncanny valley sort of a situation. So I don't know. People really liked it. Other reviewers, I just was a bit confused. The next book I read was Dragon Rogue. That is the third book in the Riders of Jade and Fire series by Melanie Ansley. I will do my best to tell you without giving spoilers because this is book 3, but basically one of the main problematic villain characters escapes at the beginning, and then there's politics and scheming in the Emperor's court, and I love it. The scheming is my favorite part. I love the scheming and politicking and backroom deals and all of the kind of sly dealings that you get in this sort of a book. I think it's very clever. The basic premise of the series is that this is a historical reimagining of Tang Dynasty China, where they have dragons and dragon riders, and I love it. I think it's really clever. I love Temeraire, and this is very much along those lines. If you're looking for historical fantasy that's very much history plus dragons, then this is absolutely a series for you, and I highly recommend it. Except for the fact that I'm still waiting for book 4. I mean, okay, book 3 just came out. That's why I reviewed it this month, because it's brand new and I was so excited. But I also want book 4 really badly. really, really badly. I'm impatient. What can I say? By the way, if you are watching this and paying attention to the words that I'm writing, they will sometimes contain spoilers for the books. So if you don't want spoilers, don't read what I'm writing. The voiceovers will never contain spoilers, but the writing absolutely does. Anyways, the next book that I read was a reread for me. This is the Jezad Heir. I reread this because I got the Jezad Crown in the post back in July, I think. It's been a couple of months now. And I was meaning to read that one, but I don't remember anything of book 1, or I didn't remember before rereading this. And I started rereading this and I go, okay, I remember enjoying this book so very much. But I remembered nothing. I couldn't even remember the main characters' names. So I reread this book, and you know what? I enjoyed it just as much. It was dramatic and intense and very well written, and I am eager to finish book 2. I'm actually reading it right now as I record this voiceover. So it is dramatic, just as dramatic as I hoped. I'm very excited. The next book I read was another Penny Reid book. This is Inheritance, which is in her Fundamentals series. She does kind of a three book series in each, or 3 book parts, and each set of 3 is its own story. This is the third part. So the first book of the third part. It's very complicated. You have to go read the description to understand really what's going on. But basically, this book is just another romance. It is very clever, very interesting. I love her books. I think they're so nice to have characters that aren't just cookie cutter examples of other rom-com heroes or heroines or whatever you want to call it. My only complaint is that it just kind of stops. It's meant to be a cliffhanger, but cliffhangers tie up all the threads and then start a new story arc, and I have seen that in her previous parts of this. Well, one of them. I've only read one part of this triad. I don't know what you would call it. because it's all technically one series, but it's 3 parts within the series. Anyways, I've read one of the parts, and I think she does that really well, where she ties everything up and then starts a new arc. This one just kind of stops right in the middle, and I was a little bummed, even though the next book is coming out in a couple of weeks. It's all going to be rapid release. It's very exciting, because that's what you can do as an indie author, but I was a bit disappointed by the ending of this book. I loved the rest of it, though, so I guess I can't complain too much. The last book that I read this month was Emily Henry's Great Big Beautiful Life. I meant to get started on the Jazad Crown, but my library hold came through after like 2 months, so I finally got around to reading this, and you know what? I enjoyed it. I have read precisely one Emily Henry book before, and I remember no details except that I enjoyed it, so I was kind of interested to see what would happen with this book, and I liked it quite a lot. It follows 3 different kind of characters all under one point of view, but there are 3 primary characters, and I love how the story weaves the 3 stories together while still maintaining that single point of view. I think it's very clever. I think it's very well written. I love the premise of the story, where it's 2 journalists competing to kind of get the ability to write this person's memoir. Autobiography? Memoir, probably. Whichever. Whatever. I think it's really well done, and I enjoyed it, and I cried. It was so lovely. So I will definitely be reading more Emily Henry. Thank you, library, for finally getting my hold through. I live in a town with a very small library, so it takes a while to get popular books, because the holds are very, very long. So that was my September reading, and now I'm going to go back and fill in some of my overall stats, like my book bingo that I don't actually care all that much about. I filled in friendship theme and number in title for Once Upon a Curse, which I didn't actually review, but I did read it, so it counts. And then my book bracket, I used Under the Earth, Over the Sky, although I think I could have used Much Ado About a Soulmate as well, and it would have been just as nice. My alphabet, I filled in the Jazad Air and Wild Reverence, and I'm now on the really hard letters of Q and other such things. Coloring in my books, read for the month, I had 14 read. If I wanted to read 200 this year, which was my sort of general goal, I have 73 books left to go. I'm not going to make it by the end of the year, and I don't really care. I don't really mind so much. But that's September, doing a quick flip through. I love how all of these kind of fit together without actually fitting together. I think they're really cute, and I enjoyed all of my reads for the month except for Metabolical. That one just drove me a bit bonkers. As you can see, my poor reading journal, it's having a hard time, but I'm enjoying it. I hope you have a great reading in October, and I shall see you next time.